You make too much money to feel this broke. A $750 truck payment can quietly steal 10 years of your life. Not $10, not 10 months, 10 years. 10 years of waking up on a Tuesday and going wherever you want. 10 years of not setting an alarm. 10 years of watching your grandchildren grow up without counting vacation days. 10 years of owning your mornings. Gone. Because of a truck. That sounds insane. It sounds like one of those clickbait headlines designed to terrify you into watching something. It sounds like an exaggeration. It isn't. Here's the number that should genuinely disturb you. A person who invests $750 per month instead of spending it can accumulate more than $500,000 after 2 decades of compounding. Not $5,000, not $50,000, $500,000 from one monthly payment, one decision, one signature on a dealership contract. And before you click away thinking this is another video telling you to drive a rusted-out sedan and never enjoy your life, stay with me, because this isn't really about trucks. By the end of this, you'll understand why 2 people with the exact same income can retire 10 years apart. You'll understand why some people making 6 figures are still working into their late 60s with nothing to show for it. And you'll understand why the most expensive thing sitting in your driveway right now may not be your vehicle. It may be the years of freedom attached to it. There was a comment I read recently that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. A business owner said he had employees earning well over $100,000 a year. Good jobs, good benefits, real income. And he could not get them to understand that a $750 truck payment invested instead could make them wealthy. That comment got buried in hundreds of others, but it revealed something most financial content never touches. Because the people buying those trucks weren't stupid, they weren't reckless, they weren't irresponsible. Most of them were hardworking people doing exactly what society told them to do. Work hard, get promoted, buy nicer things, reward yourself, look successful. And that's precisely where the trap begins. Because the moment you get a raise, something strange happens in your brain. You stop comparing yourself to who you were 5 years ago. You start comparing yourself to the people around you. The neighbor with the new truck, the coworker with the bigger house, the guy from high school posting photos from somewhere tropical, the woman at the office whose car makes yours look embarrassing in the parking lot. The scoreboard changes. And the terrifying part is that most people never notice it changed. Here's what makes this specific trap so deadly. The truck payment doesn't feel expensive, not at first. $750 spread across an entire month doesn't sound catastrophic. It's about $25 per day, less than what many families spend on food delivery, less than what some people spend mindlessly scrolling and impulse buying things they'll forget about by next week. Which is exactly why it slips past every defense you have. The real cost isn't the payment. The real cost is something almost nobody calculates, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Meet Jason. Jason is 41 years old, lives outside Houston, industrial maintenance supervisor, makes $98,000 a year, married with 2 kids, works hard, shows up early, rarely complains. He's exactly the kind of man most people would describe without hesitation as responsible. Every morning, Jason grabs coffee from the same gas station, drives 40 minutes to work, packs lunch 3 days a week, watches football on weekends, mows his lawn every Saturday. Normal guy. Good guy. Exactly the kind of person this conversation is about. A few years ago, Jason got promoted. Good raise, not life-changing, but enough to breathe, enough to finally reward himself for years of grinding. So he walked into a dealership and traded in his old truck. The salesperson was friendly, the process was smooth, the new truck smelled incredible. Monthly payment? $750. Jason looked at his income, looked at the payment, felt the math work in his head, and signed. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Jason didn't feel reckless when he signed that paper. He felt successful. The truck wasn't a mistake in his mind. It was proof. Proof that years of early mornings and difficult shifts and saying yes when he wanted to say no had finally paid off. And honestly, most people in his life agreed with him. His friends liked the truck, his coworkers respected it, his kids thought it was cool. Nothing about the moment felt wrong. But wealth destruction almost never feels wrong when it's happening. That's what makes it so effective. The dealership saw a monthly payment. Jason saw a monthly payment. The bank saw something completely different. The bank saw 24 years, because that's how long Jason had until retirement, and that's the number that actually mattered. Not $750, 24 years of compounding that just got redirected to a depreciating asset that will be almost nothing before it's paid off. Here's the math laid bare. If Jason invested that same $750 every month and earned an average long-term return of 7% annually, historically conservative for a diversified index fund, by age 65 he could have accumulated well over $500,000. $500,000 from one payment, one decision, one afternoon at a dealership. Now, before someone says people need vehicles, absolutely, of course they do. That's not the argument. Jason needs transportation. What Jason doesn't need is converting every raise into a larger obligation. Those are two completely different things, and confusing them is one of the most common and costly retirement mistakes in America. Most people think retirement is about income, about hitting a number, about crossing some magical finish line. It's not. Retirement is about ownership. The day your assets can pay your bills, work is optional. Until that day, it isn't, and every monthly payment you add delays the moment ownership catches up. Now imagine two versions of Jason. Same age, same job, same salary, same neighborhood, same intelligence, same opportunities, identical in every measurable way. The only difference is one decision. Jason A buys the truck. Jason B keeps his older truck running for 5 more years and invests the difference. That's it. One fork in the road. At 41, they look identical. At 45, still nearly identical. Their neighbors can't tell the difference, their coworkers can't tell the difference, social media absolutely cannot tell the difference. But something invisible is happening beneath the surface. Money is beginning to work for one of them, and quietly work against the other. Because wealth doesn't grow in straight lines, this is the part almost nobody understands until it's too late. The first $100,000 feels like forever. The second arrives noticeably faster. Then something shifts, something almost mechanical. The money starts earning money. Then the money earned by the money starts earning money, and eventually the growth becomes larger than the contributions. The portfolio takes on a life of its own. Compounding stops being a concept and becomes a machine that runs whether you're watching or not. Most people never reach that stage, not because they're not smart enough, not because they don't work hard enough, because they keep accidentally interrupting the process. New payment, new obligation, new financing offer, new car smell, new furniture, new credit card balance. Every raise gets consumed before it ever gets invested. And then one day they wake up at 58 staring at a number that should be much larger, wondering in genuine confusion where the money went. Here's the uncomfortable truth that almost nobody will say out loud. A lot of high-income people are not building wealth. They are renting a lifestyle. Think about what that actually means. The house belongs to the bank. The truck belongs to the lender. The furniture belongs to the financing company. The credit card balance belongs to last month. The lifestyle looks expensive from every angle, but ownership, actual ownership, surprisingly small. And retirement only responds to ownership, not appearances, not the truck in the driveway, not the square footage, not what it looks like from the street, only what you actually own. This is why two people can earn the exact same salary and end up living completely different futures. One collects assets. The other collects payments. And from the outside, this is what makes it so disorienting. The payment collector often looks richer. Bigger truck, newer everything, more visible success, more likes, more admiration from strangers. But retirement doesn't care about visible success. Retirement asks exactly one question. How much of your life do you already own? Now, someone watching this is thinking, and it's a fair thought, that life should still be enjoyed, that you can't spend 40 years being miserable in the name of a future that isn't guaranteed. Fair, completely fair, but that's actually where the biggest misunderstanding lives. People assume the choice is between enjoying life and building wealth, between living now and living later. That's not the real choice. The real choice is between a short reward and a long one. A truck payment lasts a few years. Retirement lasts decades. That asymmetry is what creates the mismatch, a short-term reward producing a long-term consequence that compounds quietly in the background until the day you finally feel it all at once. And history is full of people who learned this lesson too late. Consider professional athletes, people who earned millions, sometimes tens of millions. Some earned more money before age 30 than most families accumulate across multiple generations. Every advantage imaginable: financial advisors, agents, lawyers, access, information, resources. Yet studies have repeatedly shown that a shocking percentage of professional athletes experience serious financial problems within just a few years of leaving their sport. How does someone earn millions and still end up struggling? Because income and wealth are not the same thing. They never were. Income is what flows in. Wealth is what stays. And if enough money flows out to support a lifestyle, no matter how large the income, even enormous earnings can disappear without leaving a trace. The system doesn't care how much you made, only how much remains. That's why this conversation matters for Jason in Houston making $98,000, not just athletes making $9 million. Because the pattern is identical. Different scale, same trap. Look at Jason again. $98,000 a year. Respectable income, good provider, hard worker. But the truck doesn't cost just $750 a month. It never does. There's the insurance increase, the fuel difference, the maintenance on a newer, more complex vehicle, the registration, the upgraded accessories because the base model didn't feel right, the detailing because it needs to stay looking good. The truck becomes its own small ecosystem of spending. And every dollar feeding that ecosystem is a dollar not feeding ownership. The question stops being, can I afford this? The question has to become, what retirement date comes attached to this? That is the upgrade. That is the lens shift. That is the question quietly running in the background of every genuinely wealthy person you've ever admired. Not because they're smarter, not because they make more, because they are measuring years, not dollars. Every monthly payment is a future freedom payment made in reverse. Read that again. Every monthly payment is a future freedom payment made in reverse. Jason wasn't buying a truck for $750 a month. He was trading pieces of future freedom for transportation today. Whether that trade is worth it is a personal decision, but now at least he can see the trade. Most people never do. Fast forward to Jason at 55. The truck is gone. Of course it's gone. The truck always leaves. That's another thing nobody says at the dealership. The payment stays for years. The asset disappears. The thing that cost him everything eventually becomes worth almost nothing. Meanwhile, the money that could have been compounding kept growing long after the truck was sold, traded, forgotten. Think about how strange that is. The thing that loses value gets all the attention, all the admiration, all the social recognition. The thing that gains value sits invisible in an account nobody ever mentions at a barbecue. And that's the pattern, not just with trucks, with lifestyle inflation in every form. Every raise creates a fork in the road. One path increases assets, the other increases obligations. And people think they're choosing between spending and saving. They're actually choosing between ownership and dependency. Dependency on a paycheck, dependency on the next promotion, dependency on being healthy enough to keep working, dependency on a future version of themselves who will somehow figure it all out later. Ownership works differently. Ownership reduces dependency. Ownership creates options. Ownership buys time. And time is the only thing you cannot buy back at any price. Nobody shows up at a dealership and hears, "This truck costs $750 a month and approximately 10 years of future flexibility." Nobody hears that. They hear four words that have probably destroyed more retirement wealth than any market crash in history. You can afford the payment. Of course you can. Most people can afford the payment. The question is whether they can afford the consequences, and that is a completely different calculation that nobody at the dealership will ever help you run. Income creates opportunity. Behavior determines outcome. That's why some people earning $60,000 quietly become millionaires, and some people earning $150,000 quietly remain stressed and confused and perpetually behind. The income isn't the variable, the behavior is. And if compounding is the greatest financial force ever discovered, and it is, then anything that interrupts compounding is the greatest financial threat you face. Not recessions, not bad investments, not inflation, interruption. If every truck payment immediately removed one day from your retirement date, people would notice. Imagine the notification on your phone. Payment received, retirement delayed by 1.3 days. People would recalculate everything. People would panic. People would make different decisions. But that's not how it happens. The delay is invisible, silent, spread across decades in a way that never triggers an alarm, until one day you're 61 years old, sitting at a desk you've sat at for 30 years, and freedom still feels exactly as far away as it did at 40. That's the cost, not $750, not $500,000. 10 years of Tuesday mornings you will never get back. The truck was never the villain. The truck was the flashlight. It exposed a system where people are taught to calculate monthly payments instead of lifetime consequences, where "you can afford it" gets celebrated and "what does this cost in years" never gets asked. Jason finally learned to ask that question, not because someone shamed him, not because someone lectured him, because he started measuring his financial life in years instead of payments. And the moment that happened, every decision looked different. Every upgrade looked different. Every fork in the road looked completely different. If this landed for you, if something shifted, share it. Not for the algorithm, not for this channel, for the Jason in your life. The person earning real money, working real hours, living a real life, and quietly trading years of freedom for a payment that feels completely manageable every single month. They don't know what they're trading. You do now. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing money this way, because the next one covers something hiding in plain sight, a purchase almost everyone celebrates, that society actively encourages, and that almost nobody ever calculates the true cost of. And unlike the truck, it might be stealing even more years.